Welcome back, everybody. It is theawesemo.com, as my YouTube plays in the background here. It is theawesemo.com MLB Dfs strategy show. Down to 2 gamers. Hopefully everybody had a good, profitable weekend. And at least on the sites, you can see the payouts. I am joined by a familiar guest, someone I haven't done a show with for a while, though. Adam Scherer. Adam, how's it going, man? What's been going on? Just been... I guess I haven't really talked to you since you started crushing NHL DFS and becoming a pro in that. So
it's been a while. I guess not having MLB strategy shows in the morning for a lot of the summer threw things off. But yeah, pretty good. Playing every DFS sport, and it's been fun. How you been?
Yeah, good. Yeah, same kind of thing. Not doing super hot in some of the big ones, but I saw you were playing MMA. And obviously NHL when that was going on, NBA, NFL. Yeah, dude, it's been a crazy past couple months. So nice to finally be on here with you. I guess first of all, we should probably just talk about general 2-game strategy. Terry and I talked a little bit, but for these short slates, I mean, what are you looking at as far as like uniques? Are you looking to go down to 1 unique? Do you think you're going to need to hit the absolute optimal in order to be live to win a tournament here? Do you allow hitters versus pitcher? And then how much comfortable in general are you willing to leave on the table? How much salary? So if you have any thoughts on those, we can get those out of the way and then start breaking it down here.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think it's just being really flexible because obviously with 4 offenses and 4 pitchers going, like there's not there's not a ton of options. So I think it typically on short slates, regardless of the sport, it kind of the pendulum kind of swings to the point where even if you're doing things that you know are somewhat suboptimal, it probably makes up for it in the fact that it ends up being contrarian. And when you're trying to not chop a tournament a million ways, being different is so important on these slates. So I don't worry too much about doing something kind of unusual. Like obviously I'm not planning on running like 5-man Dodger stacks and Max Fried in the same lineup or something, but getting 2 hitters against my pitcher or whatever is fine. I don't worry too much about the salary either, especially in baseball, just because, again, I think that if I'm leaving more salary than I'm comfortable with, it's just helping me be contrarian. So I'm not really too worried about that either. I think that stacking is kind of an interesting topic. Like we had already talked about it, Josh and I, on previous shows. As the slates get smaller in the playoffs, you kind of could make the argument in both directions. One being that stacking is less important because there's less teams playing, so there's less of a chance of one team going off. The other side being that with good pitchers going, it's harder to get good one-off plays, so getting them all from the same team makes sense, just hoping that you get a pitcher on a bad day. So I think that on a 2-game slate, I'm probably just going to go to smaller stacks, maybe some like 3-2s or something like that. Getting guys from the same team that I'm going to play anyway, kind of in lineups together, but also not forcing 5-mans because the chances of one team scoring a ton of runs isn't really that high.
Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. I'm probably going to allow like 2 to 3 even uniques. Guys against my pitcher. Yep. On this slate. I don't think you're going to get most lineups with 3. So you got to keep that in mind. You might get like 1 or even 0, depending on which site you're playing, but definitely 1. Probably upwards of 3. Crazy things can happen on a 2-game slate. Like you could see a pitcher pitch 4 innings and be in the optimal because no one else really goes off. But if he has a bunch of strikeouts, you could see the stack go off against him, or 2 or 3 hitters go off against him or against his bullpen, even though he has a pretty good game. So I think you're probably, I haven't studied a ton on these slates, but you're probably going to have to hit close to the optimal if you're talking about like the 50K to first.
Yeah, I would think so.
So yeah, someone's going to hit the absolute nuts. Do you consider relievers at all on these slates, or is that just kind of for showdown only?
I mean, it kind of depends on the pitching. Like I'm pretty sure on 2-game slates in the past, I have done it, but on this particular slate, I don't think that I would. There's obviously no clear bulk guy, but also all of these pitchers are like legitimate starters. So I'm expecting, if all goes well, you're expecting these guys to go at least 4 or 5 innings, if not more. And then once that happens, you kind of get to the point where the relievers coming in are typically giving you an inning or an inning plus. And so you're kind of guessing, like if you go the reliever route, you're guessing, one, at what relievers are actually used. And then 2, your upside is like they pitch 1 inning and get, 3 strikeouts. So the absolute nuts is that you got like 6 points or whatever. So I don't, on this particular slate, I don't think I'll go that route. Plus, the hitting pricing has been soft enough, and quickly looking right now, it looks like the same thing on DraftKings. It's like there's 2 hitters on this entire slate that are $5,000 or higher. Acuna's $5K on DraftKings, Betts is $5,200. Those are the only 2 that I see. So there's no real reason for me to be trying to save money going from like a $7,300 McCullers to a $4K guy that might not pitch.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Eric in the chat says, thanks for doing these MLB shows. Yeah, a little bit earlier today, we've got a jam-packed day of shows going on. So just to preview, let me see if I can find my spot here. Coming up after this, we're going to have the NFL strategy show. So we moved that back, replaced that with MLB because we've got an early live before lock show. These games don't start at the same time. If you guys are unaware, 4:07 Eastern is going to be lock time, and then the other game will be later, so they don't overlap as much. After that, we've got Adam will be back again on the NFL strategy show with Lofty and Josh. You're still doing that show, right? Since you're doing this,
the NFL show,
yeah. I call that one the mental health show. So usually not all 3 of you guys win, and so I can, 1 or 2 of you maybe win, but I can relate to some of the mistakes that were made. So I really like watching that show.
Whenever you can watch shows where people talk about losing, it always makes you feel better.
It actually does. And it's, I don't think people do this as much anymore, but like back in the day, when DFS was easier, like more people, like more of your brand name DFS Twitter personalities were winning, it would seem like no one ever lost. So if you were losing, you were like, man, I must just be a complete, donkey here.
Oh yeah. Like there's so many just kind of like mental games with DFS, especially when you're losing. But like that's one of the things that sucks about Twitter, is like obviously you're seeing 90% of the time you're seeing people win, or you're just not seeing anything at all, and it can really get in your head when it's just like, man, like I'm getting my ass kicked over the last week or 2, and everybody else is winning. Like it's definitely refreshing to just hear people don't always win.
That's why lineup study is great. You can look at your own lineups, look at the pros, some of the top names you respect, and just maybe sort by losses in the tournament, and just see like how bad it could have been, or how bad some of these guys lost money on this particular slate that are also really good players. So I try to remind myself that show is a really good show for that talk over process. Any mistakes that were made, things that you guys did well. So I'll be sure to tune into that one. After that, we've got the Fantasy Football Waiver Wire show. I don't believe that one's going to be live. It'll be pre-recorded, but that'll be pushed out later this afternoon once I get that up. And then PGA First Look with Jason and Jeff Ulrich, MLB live before lock tonight. And then obviously no NBA tonight. Lakers closed that out. Were you surprised at the result of that at all?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. After the couple injuries in game 1 for the Heat, I think.
Yes. I mean, I was surprised it went 6 games.
Yeah. That was a pretty good game 5. Not so much in the game 6, kind of over before it started. But let's get into the couple MLB games. Houston and Tampa Bay is going to lead us off here. Tampa Bay about a -130 favorite, 3.8 implied total for the Astros, 4.3 for the Rays here. Lance McCullers and Charlie Morton on the mound, and both reasonably priced. Looking on DraftKings, 7,300 for McCullers, 7,100 for Morton. On FanDuel, 7,500 for McCullers, 8K for Morton. I'm not sure there's necessarily like a must-have option in the slate. There's no like Garrett Cole or someone I think you have to have in your lineups from a pitching perspective from these 4. I think they're all pretty much in play, which is nice. We don't have like the opener, or bullpen game or something like that. This being the second game of the Tampa series and the first game of the Atlanta series. So they got a few days off. But But if you had to choose one of these pitchers, who would you be going after, McCullers or Morton?
I'd go to McCullers. I think that, and the reasoning is just that I think there's more strikeouts in the Tampa Bay lineup. Both of these lineups are dangerous, but you do have more strikeouts from Tampa, whereas Houston, even during the regular season when they were struggling offensively, they're still a difficult team to strike out. McCullers has really kind of been up and down this season. He started out the year really poorly. His curveball wasn't working like it should. And he's always a pitcher that's really difficult for me to kind of gauge like how he's pitching too, because he's such a unique pitcher. Most of the stuff that you would look at and go to in like Brooks Baseball to try and figure stuff out is kind of useless because he's just so unique, and there's nothing you can look at and just say like, oh, this is what's right, this is what's wrong. But he is coming off of his last start against Texas, 16.5% swinging strike percentage, which is good to see. He's been in double digits 3 starts in a row now, going back to the middle of September. So that's good to see. That was 2 starts ago. Last start was the 5th against Oakland. He struggled a bit, but I think that the strikeout upside is a little bit higher from Tampa. It's a boom or bust spot because again, he's basically someone that if his curveball is not on, he's very reliant on it, so it becomes difficult for him. But I do think the strikeout upside is there, and he's pretty cheap.
Yeah, for sure. I think I would go with McCullers as well, but he's the guy with Terry and I have talked a bunch as we've been doing more strategy shows together lately. Like we can't really predict when he was going to have a good start for a while. He looked pretty poor for a while, had a couple big starts in there. Like was still missing bats, so we were kind of always in on him. But it's just one of those guys that because of the amount of bats he misses, I'm pretty much always going to have some interest, especially on a 2-game slate here. Ownership is going to be key here. And if you want to look at the top pitchers tool, it is free for today. So I think, let me see if we have ownership updated. Top pitcher tool gets updated as ownership gets updated. So we just got an update actually. And looking at these 2 guys, if you're talking about DraftKings, again, you guys can see this for free. MLB top pitcher tool. Max Fried is at a 46.1% chance of being a top 2 pitcher on DK. 31% ownership. Morton, 44.5% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. 46% ownership. I don't know why I mentioned Fried off the bat there. I'm thinking of McCullers. He's technically a little bit over-owned. He's above 60%. McCullers and Buehler getting the most ownership, and then Morton and Fried after that. So McCullers slightly over-owned, I would say, but I don't think there's anyone ridiculous that's being played because there's only 4 options today. So yeah, top pitcher tool is really awesome. And you can imagine how useful that is for a 2-game slate. Have you figured out a good way to work the top pitcher tool into your process? I know you have the top stacks in there. How do you use the top pitcher tool?
I use the top 2 percentage just as kind of a more accurate way, because one big thing I do across sports is obviously comparing chance of success to projected ownership and using that to kind of determine, leverage I'm getting in lineups. And it's difficult in baseball because if you're trying to be accurate, you can't kind of figure it out as easily because results aren't normally distributed. So it's not as easy to do. So I use the top 2 pitcher percentage as, the proxy for, what ownership should be more or less.
Yeah, for sure. There's a bunch of ways I've heard people use it, but it is a really cool tool. If you don't know how to run simulations, you don't have to because Alex does them for you. And you guys can check that out for free today. Shout out to Nightbot for putting that in there. Click on that link right there if you would like to take a look. Now, Morton against the Astros here. I guess, what do you make of the Astros? Since we haven't done many shows together, we've got a little bit of time here. Are you of the mindset that the cheating wasn't actually helping them that much and they are this good of a team? I know they didn't have a good regular season, but that's a 60-game stretch. And any team can have a bad couple month stretch and then turn it on in the playoffs. They still have a really, really good top 6 or 7 hitters here.
Right. I mean, I kind of thought the whole thing was overblown because, for one, if you went back and looked at their home and away stats when they were cheating, at least going from memory, because I looked at it right when it all came out, I don't remember it really saying what I thought it would. Like, looking at underlying stuff like chase percentage and stuff like that at home, it wasn't as drastic, if I remember correctly, as you would expect it to be, knowing what pitches were coming. And then also, you still want to think about it. For the most part, these guys were all top prospects. Like Jose Altuve kind of came out of nowhere, but Springer, Bregman, like these are top prospects. Kyle Tucker, Correa, these are all guys that were supposed to be very good Major League Baseball players. It's not like you have a team full of guys where it's like, man, how did these guys all get good? Oh, they were cheating. Like they're still, the assumption should be that they're going to be a very, very, very good offense. And then I think that you kind of got confirmation bias when they struggled, like you said, over 60 games during the regular season. Like the chances of the Astros going from what they were offensively to like a league average offense just because of not doing whatever it was they were doing before in home games is just so low. So I still view them as a very good offensive team. And as I'd mentioned before, they still don't strike out. So even when they're not very good offensively, they still are difficult to take pitchers against.
Yeah. I'm kind of in the same mindset. Like maybe they got helped a little bit by the cheating. Maybe it was more of a mental thing for them, like knowing what was coming.
I was gonna say that's my guess is that it probably had more to do mentally than anything else.
Yeah. I don't know. They're just really awesome. And so they had this bad stretch. People are saying that they wouldn't be doing this if they were fans in the stands, but like, I don't know. Like, I think the other way around, actually, like if they could silence these booing crowds and stuff with these home runs they're hitting in the playoffs, like they'd be like probably feeding off that even more if you're into that kind of stuff. So, I just think they're an awesome team. They didn't have a good 60 game stretch, and that doesn't really matter. They're probably still going to be a good team to come. So not really a team you love taking pitchers against because they've got a bunch of guys with low K rates. But is there anything you like in the Morton versus Astros matchup here?
Well, you mentioned the ownership between Morton and McCullers. I do think that's interesting to look at because I don't think that they're very different in terms of expected outcomes. They're both. They actually come in this season with the exact same strikeout percentage of 24.7%. xFIP for Morton's 401, for McCullers it's 368. Like they're very similar in terms of what they do from a DFS standpoint. They're both, like their innings projections are very similar. So even though the strikeout matchup is tougher, and I think, as I said at the top, I think McCullers is the preferred option. I don't think the ownership gap should be too big between these guys. And I think that's reflected in the top pitchers tool as well. You mentioned McCullers kind of being overowned, Morton's ownership coming in about where it should. So I think that you potentially, it's something to pay attention to. Like if the ownership gap widens, then you can start getting to Morton. But it is a tough matchup for him.
I mean, so if anybody doesn't know, FanDuel is still not paid out yesterday. Not bashing them. People have issues. And I was just scrolling through my tabs and I clicked on a Discord that I'm in, and a guy in there was asking Dave from FC, who has all the information on FanDuel. He ran it and he can see like who won contests, and he was like, "Can you run the luxury box on FanDuel?" And Dave was like, "Yeah." And then turns out the guy who asked ended up winning it for $20K. So it's just crazy that someone else can see that, have all that information before the site can.
I see Dave on Twitter posting the winners from FanDuel, and I totally forgotten about it. I was just like, okay, why is Dave like blowing up my timeline, just telling me who won FanDuel tournaments? But yeah, it makes sense.
That's crazy. Have you played a lot of NFL Showdown, Adam? Yeah,
I've been playing pretty much every slate this year.
Yeah, so have I. It has not been going well. I've had a couple sweats, and I obviously didn't take advantage. Nothing I could do, but lost one on the last play. Lost one with like a minute or two left. Pretty big splits both times, and ended up not cashing in. But been having some fun playing Showdown. And if you guys want to have fun as well, we really beefed up our Express NFL package. It stayed the same price. It's under $4, under a Starbucks cup of coffee per day, as they say in the biz. And with that, you get all of our Showdown tools. So ownership, Awesemo's top plays, and then obviously Showdown projections, rankings, all that, along with the main slate Express Top Stacks tool. So It's a really, really great deal if you guys are into Showdown. I know a lot of casual people like Showdown and a lot of pros and people really serious about DFS like Showdown as well. A lot of people say that their ROIs are higher in Showdown, people that are grinding this day in and day out, because there is so much casual money. So if you guys are thinking about becoming members, if you want to get into the premium Slack, this is the cheapest package we have, and it's a pretty good offer. We just added in all of our Showdown content. So I think it's a steal. Take advantage if you're thinking about signing up, and then get in Slack when you do, because there's people talking all kinds of things. But there's also some DFS and betting talk going on in there as well.
On a side note, I've started playing Showdown cash games, and very, very small sample, but it seemed pretty soft.
Just play the Awesemo.
Yeah. I mean, play cash lineup, but yeah, I mean, like posting head-to-heads actually sell. Like yesterday, I forgot to even post them until a couple hours before the game, and I sold a decent amount of them. So that's nice, getting to play against like people that aren't regulars. And then 50-50s have been pretty easy so far.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I'm sure people overthink it in Showdown all the time, or just like don't realize, like when there's a Q tag next to a guy, that guy just like doesn't get played.
Yeah, and just roster construction is still kind of different, so people make mistakes, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Showdown's awesome, man, but it's like I haven't decided if I should just not check for the rest of the day or like the rest of the game. Right. When the game starts, because you can't do anything. You can't.
Right, and everything changes so quickly. And like because of the captain spot, you don't even really know what you're rooting for, like other than your captain. Like,
yeah, the one I lost was I think we had the same lineup, just different captains, and then there was a running back Kamara catch at the end. Last play of the game, ended up losing a couple nights on Monday night. So yeah, it was not great, but did it with the tools on the site and got close, and that's all you can really do. Give yourself a chance to get lucky every once in a while. Closing out this Houston-Tampa Bay game, I've got the ownership pulled up for these guys, and nothing's really sticking out too much from a hitting perspective. I will say, like, the catchers are getting basically no ownership, Zunino and Maldonado. So if you are stacking, maybe guys you want to work in here, there's 4 guys that are under 10% ownership. That's on FanDuel because the catchers never get played over there. I usually play catchers on FanDuel because they get really, really low ownership. Looking at the DK ownership, 1 guy under 10% ownership. Can you guess who that is? Josh Reddick, indeed. $2,900. I mean, righty lefty matchup. I don't know why you would be getting completely overlooked. But there's a bunch of guys in here that are under 20%. Do any of these ownerships not make sense to you, or is this kind of in line with what you're thinking?
It's pretty much in line with what I'm thinking. I do think Kyle Tucker may be a little bit lower owned than he should be. Morton's biggest weakness this season, and again, small sample size, and it's not necessarily something that's plagued him in the past, but really had issues with left-handed power. 210 ISO allowed, 211 expected ISO. You get Kyle Tucker most likely hitting 5th here. Got power from the left side, only 17% ownership on DraftKings at 3,800, and he comes with stolen base upside as well. So I do like Kyle Tucker a lot.
Darrell in chat says you are all aware that DraftKings site is not closing the contest. I don't know if you're referring to FanDuel. FanDuel is not paid out as far as I know.
DraftKings, I don't think, is paid out college football, and apparently KBO. I didn't know people were still playing that, but somebody told me that they haven't paid it out.
Really? Okay, so some hiccups.
I won a $100 bet with a friend yesterday because he said that DraftKings wouldn't pay out the main NFL slate because their scoring would be down, and the scoring was just never down at any point. So it was a pretty easy.
Because I think DK had a similar message. Or no, it was just because of the previous night. They were fine for MMA, and it
was fine for MMA. They had issues with college football, but then NFL was fine. I'm assuming DraftKings has it figured out.
Uzi says, what's the Twitter that posted FanDuel results? That's Fantasy Cruncher. I think it's just at Fantasy Cruncher. FC Dave is posting some of the winners because he has that power, and apparently FanDuel does not. I'm like, they could do that by hand too. Like if they just had a few people go through the box scores, I'm assuming they could probably get that done relatively quickly, but they're probably just waiting on some massive sync that they need with their live scoring provider. Maybe they don't want to do it by hand because they don't want that liability if they mess something up. Let's go to Atlanta and the LA Dodgers here. Which series are you more intrigued by? Just from a viewing perspective, are you watching a lot of these games? You plan on watching?
I haven't been watching too much. I'll probably watch more now because one less sport with basketball being over. But more intrigued by the Dodgers Braves just because they have so many hitters that I really like.
Yeah, just stacked lineups on both sides. Fried and Walker Buehler are going to start today. 3.7 implied total for the Braves, 4.4 for the Dodgers. Dodgers about -140 favorites. Going to be the A-plus lineups because we're talking about the playoffs here. So that's a good part about playing these two gamers when there's a late game and half the slate locks 4 hours later. You pretty much know who's going to play. There might be one or two guys that you need to swap out. And so there will be some dead lineups if people just don't swap. So you're going to see some of these guys at like 3 or 4%. If they don't end up being in the lineup, just be aware of that. Just play guys that are in the lineup. Give yourself a chance to get a positive score, and you're going to be ahead of a good chunk of the field, especially at lower stakes. Fried going up against the Dodgers here. I mean, just one of the best lineups that we've seen recently. Even their lefties are strong versus lefties. Seager, Muncy, and Cody Bellinger. The rest of the guys are going to be righties. 6 righties going up against Fried. I guess he's got to be our least favorite option here, but is there any merit in playing him over on DraftKings?
Yeah, I mean, he's the one pitcher that on DraftKings we have projected for lower ownership than his top 2 pitcher percentage. Alex actually has his top 2 percentage higher than Morton, which I personally don't think I agree with, but it should at least be close. And the ownership gap is pretty big. So from an ownership standpoint, I think Fried makes sense. I do think he's the 4th best option as far as just, what you're expecting. The Dodgers are a pretty difficult team to strike out. They have tons of power from both sides of the plate, as you said. Fried comes in with the lowest strikeout percentage on the slate this year at 22.3%. It is worth mentioning that he struck out 24.5% of righties compared to 14.5% of lefties, because you do expect that you'll get a mostly right-handed lineup from the Dodgers, so that can drive up his strikeout percentage a little bit. But that being said, you're still not excited that you get to face Mookie Betts and Justin Turner and Will Smith and all these guys. So really, really tough spot for him. But if the ownership stays where it is, I think that he's probably going a little bit on their own.
Did you say he struck out 14% of lefties
this season? Yeah.
Is that it? Wow. So it's a changeup then, I'm assuming, is what he throws.
He throws his curveball less to lefties. And last year, last year he struck out 29% of lefties. This year he's at 14.5.
60 games is nothing.
Right.
This is crazy. Some of these numbers you're seeing.
I mean, he threw 33% as many pitches to lefties as he did last season.
Okay.
So my assumption is that he's going to just strike out both sides. But if you look at his average strikeout percentage this season is brought down by his inability to strike out lefties for whatever reason.
Yeah. Any hitters you want to single out that grade out well against Fried? I know it's all these guys, but
yeah, all of them.
Bottom of the lineup, like 7, 8, 9.
I love going to the bottom of the Dodgers lineup, especially on shorter slates where the opportunity cost isn't as high, because they're just one of these teams, and the Braves are the same way, where naturally you're just going to get lower ownership at the bottom of the order because people don't want to play guys at the bottom of the order. They project a little bit lower because of the at-bat expectations, but you still have a bunch of power with guys like Pollock, with Taylor, with Hernandez. These guys all can do damage. Hernandez does come with pinch hit risk, which is, a problem, but he's also really cheap. So whatever. But you're just going to get a little bit of an ownership discount going to the bottom of the order. You can be, a little bit more contrarian that way. So I think that's good. Fried really did a good job of limiting power this year. Again, small sample, but 0.32 home runs per 9. Expected ISO below 100 to both sides of the plate this season. So nobody, I think, is going to grade out as is especially likely to hit a home run. But, again, you're just talking about really good hitters from the Dodgers. So I'm not really concerned about what Fried's actual home run numbers are, over the season.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know, 1 game sample, 2 game slate. You just need Fried to basically survive to give you a chance of being in the optimal lineup. And then he'd be a guy that I'd be willing to take 2 guys against. It's just really hard to imagine not having Dodgers in your, like, at least sprinkled into your lineups here.
Yeah. And you mentioned the left-handed bats too. That's a spot that, with how good the Dodgers lefties are, I'm not sure if you'll get that ownership discount lefty or not. But like right now we have Bellinger at 20% projected ownership, Muncy at 19, Seager a little higher at 31. But you have to assume that if Fried were just right-handed and basically the same pitcher other than that those ownership numbers would be higher. And you look at those lefties, Bellinger this season, 228 expected ISO against lefties, Muncy 244, Seager 228. Like, these guys still have tons of power against lefties. So in addition to using the bottom of the order, going to these lefties, you're going to get a little bit of ownership discount, I think.
Daryl again says, I'm sorry, gentlemen, but you were promoting a Monday MLB slate with the weekend MLB slate not paying out. So I guess they didn't pay out some MLB slates this weekend.
Not promoting anything though, and this guy's still watching. So
yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, we just do what we're told to some extent, at least. So can't really control that. They will make it right at some point. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, it's like, I guess I don't keep a ton of money in my account, so I'm like used to depositing every once in a while, because you're gonna have a downswing, but for like people that have like $200 in their account and they play most of it in the NFL and then they don't get paid out, like that's on them for losing out on customers. Yeah, smaller volume customers, but I'm sure there was a ton of that going on. So they want to pay you out. They want to keep turning your money over anyways. So it's obviously they're having an issue. You can't really do anything about it. We certainly can't do anything about it. So we're just going to keep chugging along, talking about DK, FanDuel, Yahoo, whatever site you guys want to talk about, because that's what we're paid to do. Buehler, 8,500 going up against the Braves. Not a very good matchup. I was trying to pull up Buehler's start in the playoffs, or his couple starts in the playoffs, and Fangraphs was not cooperating. But looking at him in the regular season, didn't get started until the 28th of July. I guess that's when most guys got started, but didn't have a ton of starts this season. A little bit of an uneven year for Buehler. Only went 6 innings. Let's see, one time it looks like, but he had 11 strikeouts. Buehler against the Braves. He's our number 1 pitcher in the top pitcher tool. Is there anything you don't like about this matchup with the Braves? Relative to the rest of these matchups.
Yeah, I was gonna say, other than that, he's facing the Braves now. I do think it's good to see that you got 95 pitches out of him last start. Only went 4 innings against the Padres in that one, but the pitch count's important just because clearly not limited. He'd been dealing with blister issues at the end of the regular season, basically for like the entire last month of the regular season, and so it was kind of keeping his pitch counts down. But now clearly fully stretched out, which is really good to see. Hopefully he can be a little bit more pitch efficient and go a little bit deeper into this game. But one thing about the Braves too is that while they do have a lot of power, which Buehler actually did struggle with over the limited season this year, 1.7 home runs per 9, but along with that power does come a lot of strikeouts. Acuna will strike out. D'Arnaud is tough to strike out, but Swanson, Duvall, Riley, like these guys all do give you strikeouts. So it's not quite the same Braves team as we had in previous years where they were really tough to strike out. Now they're really dangerous, but they do still, but they do actually have strikeouts. So I think it looks good for Buehler in that regard as well. Comes in with the highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 28.5%. So everything I think, looks good.
Yeah. There was an issue with our projections page, but looking like Alex got it fixed here since we've been on. Buehler projects just like less than a point higher than the rest of these guys. So I think pitching matters very little today. Like you're going to land, if you play a bunch of lineups, you're going to land on the optimal construction. And so I think what I would plan on doing is just not going crazy with any one of these guys. They're, like I said, I think they're pretty interchangeable, all projecting between 13.4 points and 16.2. In baseball, with the results not being normally distributed, like you said earlier, Adam, these guys can be all over the place. So I wouldn't worry too much. I would try to focus on hitters and, trying to get different. So is there anyone on the Braves that strikes you as a pretty good tournament play?
So kind of mentioned it when we talked about the Dodgers, but the Braves are another team that I like using the bottom of the order to be different. Obviously they're going to project a little bit lower, but you still have legitimate power down there. Austin Riley only projected for 16% ownership. Adam Duvall at 16%. Markakis only coming in at 6%. Markakis the least power out of that group, but these guys are cheap. They have power. They'll make your lineup a little bit different. So obviously you're looking to roster Acuna, Freeman, Ozuna, d'Arnaud, these guys at the top of the order. d'Arnaud takes up the catcher position for you. I would expect most of the catcher ownership is coming from this game between d'Arnaud and Will Smith. But mixing in these lower order guys, particularly Duvall and Riley, that can very easily get into one and hit one out at low ownership, I think is a good approach in tournaments.
Yeah, absolutely. Just trying to look up some results of the last two gamer we had. I want to say it was, there was a night slate a few nights ago, and just kind of see what the winning construction looks like. I'm guessing it's not going to be that crazy. It was the Yankees and then the Dodgers were the two. So it must have been Dodgers against someone, and then the Yankees against the Rays. This was last week. It was basically just a 5-man Yankees stack: Higashioka, LeMahieu, Gleyber Torres, Aaron Hicks, Brett Gardner, and then on the Dodgers side, it was Betts, Turner, Bellinger. So no pitchers against hitter can be done. I would still like to include that just because you're probably going to be a 1v1 or 2v2 away from it anyways if you're throwing a bunch of bullets at these top heavy tournaments. So just being different, like there might be 8 people that have the 5-3 stack, but if you're the 1 or 2 that just changes one spot, you're in a better spot long term, even though it might not always work out with that negative correlation. Anything else you want to mention on this slate? Otherwise, we can start to get on out of here.
No, I mean, I think just to keep in mind, again, it's a 2-game baseball slate. So not only is it 2 games, but it's in a sport that inherently has a ton of variance. So I really just wouldn't worry too much about, like you were saying, I think a lot of things that you would do that make you uncomfortable from a roster construction standpoint, or maybe that are a little bit suboptimal in terms of correlation, are going to be outweighed by the fact that it's just giving you a different lineup. So I 2-game baseball slate, I wouldn't worry too much about most of the rules that you kind of use for building lineups in general. It's more of just, trying to find ways to be different.
Yep. Relax the settings on the optimizer if you're using Fantasy Cruncher. Other than that, yeah, just differentiate maybe 1 or 2 spots with your hitting. I don't think pitching matters too much. I wouldn't, there's no reliever that I'm really targeting. Maybe you get an idea that you could get a 4K reliever or something later in the day. But these guys can all go pretty deep. So trying to pick a guy that's not even maybe going to pitch is always difficult. You're outsmarting yourself a little bit. So wouldn't necessarily target relievers. If you feel really good about one, go for it. But it's not like you get extra points for picking a reliever. They still need to get probably a couple innings and a bunch of strikeouts. And that's not really something I'm interested in trying to figure out. So differentiate on the bats a little bit. Top pitcher tool is free again today. There's only 4 pitchers to choose from, but some pretty good information. I'll put that in chat. I see a bunch of you who have already hit the like button. That helps us out a ton. Even though we got a small crew today, chat brought it per usual. Other than that, loaded day of shows coming on. 10 a.m. Eastern. That's in 20 minutes. We've got Laffy and Matt G. NFL Showdown Strategy Show. If you're playing Showdown tonight and you want to get that Express Pass and use that to the best of your abilities, you're going to make sure to tune into that show. After that, Adam's back on with Laffy and Josh talking about Week 5 NFL DFS. The season's already flying by, even with all the positive COVID tests. We'll see. I mean, we're planning on having an NFL game tonight and tomorrow. We'll see if that actually happens. I'm sure we'll have a bunch of Showdown strategy and articles for tomorrow. If that game goes off, we've got PGA DFS First Look. We've got MLB Live Before Lock with Josh Engelman and Team McBee, Terry McBride. That locks at 4:07 p.m. Eastern. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us in Premium Slack. Otherwise, we will see you back here soon. Good luck, everybody.